Okay, let's get some perspective right now. I have with me Terry Austin, and now I also have with me here on set a trial attorney, Guy D'Andrea. Guy, great to have you here. Let me ask you a question. The idea of James Carlos Santos being believable or not. The prosecution was having none of it yesterday, saying he's schizophrenic, he's delusional, he takes credit for murders that happened and for murders that never really happened. And now they're trying to say that he was just formulating his story based upon what was coming out in the media. So after everything you've seen, do you believe the Santos story?
I don't, and I'm a former homicide prosecutor out of Philadelphia, so I have seen throughout my career prior to going to civil, many individuals do exactly what Mr. Carlos is doing, come forward and confess to crimes that are provable did not occur. And the fact that he has confessed to murders in the past that were proved to be false, I think speaks volumes.
And I just want to follow up with you, because I asked Terry Austin about this as well. The idea that he's not in prison right now for the rest of his life. So why risk that? Why say I'm responsible for a quadruple homicide if the penalty for that could be, life in prison or a death penalty if he's ultimately charged? Why do that? Because he's afraid of getting killed in the yard in prison, because he doesn't want to have a bad reputation with the drug community and his drug associates, even though this is something that happened 9 years ago. He's been living since.
Sure. So that sounds like a perverse concept, that someone would confess to a murder facing life, if not death. The reality is, though, and again, this is perverse, that people who confess to murders, especially in a drug cartel type ring, you get a lot of credit, street cred, in prison, in the community, and all of a sudden you become a leader for committing this atrocious homicide involving 3 children.
Wow, it's something we're learning about, I'll tell you that much. All right, so Patrick Sanford, he's an FBI special agent, is just taking the stand. We're going to go live and we'll hear more. Harry, there's a problem here, because what did we learn yesterday from Santos? His description of Avila is a little different, is it not?
Here's what I think, Jesse. Believe nothing that you hear and half of what you say. So the jury is thinking, is Santos telling the truth? People are trying to say that he's making this up, he's delusional, but Avila's DNA is in the house.
Well, so, it couldn't be excluded. It couldn't be excluded. That was the thing from the DNA expert yesterday. It couldn't be excluded. So I'm just playing devil's advocate there, Terry.
Okay, well, here's the other side of that. There's a female DNA in the house. So, I'm just saying, if I'm sitting on that jury, I'm thinking to myself, all these people were in the house. I mean, Segura was there, but he's been there multiple times. So the fact that these other DNA elements were in the house, I think that's a real problem. And I think the jury is trying to corroborate between Santos and Segura. And if they're trying to make those testimonies fit together, they're going to look at this extra evidence, and the extra evidence is the DNA. And I think that's going to pull a lot of weight.
I don't know, because what we just heard from this FBI special agent, he's not a tall, skinny Colombian man, which is the way he was described by Santos. And coupled with that, the fact that Santos ordered a hit on a woman who he couldn't tell how old she was, he couldn't really give a concrete physical description of. Unless this guy's the most evil person ordering hits left and right, wouldn't you think he would know this? And I want to get your perspective here, Guy, on that one.
Yes, if you're ordering a hit from a drug cartel, especially this drug cartel, which is one of the most violent out of Mexico, first of all, this is an incredibly sloppy hit if you're seeing it from such a sophisticated organization. And the fact that he doesn't know the target, or at least the nitty-gritty and specifics, is troubling to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Terry, couple that with the fact what we heard at the beginning of the case, the idea of the gun and the bullets that were used, there was a suggestion by the prosecution that this man, Henry Segura, owned a weapon that was the same one used in this attack, and that the bullets that were used and the way this was done would seem to suggest somebody that didn't have training. And I'm curious about that, because if this was a gang-related hit, you would imagine they're pretty trained in this, or you would assume that. So what do you think about it?
I'm adding up all of the evidence, and that does weigh against the defense. I would think that an organized crime hit as sophisticated as this cartel is would be a bit more careful in terms of the type of gun and making sure that the bullets fit the gun. On the other hand, the defense has brought in testimony that it wasn't just a gun, there was a bat. And one of the things I raised before is the fact that these bullets, she was shot 7 or 8 times, if you look at the re-entry of the 7th bullet. But maybe it was to torture her. Maybe they knew they would shoot her and the velocity of these bullets wouldn't go as fast. I mean, some could think it's a conspiracy theory, but at the same time, it was violent and it was revenge. And I think that there's an argument both ways, and I think the jury is going to have to think carefully about the evidence.
Guy, do you think that the testimony of James Santos actually hurt the defense or helped? Because he didn't testify in the first trial, and yet with a 12-person jury, we have 6 people here, there was an 8-4 split in favor of acquittal. That's pretty good for the defense.
Yeah.
Did it help to have him on? Because he was so grilled by the prosecution where they made him look like he was delusional and schizophrenic.
Yeah, I mean, so from my experience, sometimes when the defense puts on evidence, I almost want to mark that as one of my exhibits because more often than not, I find that it backfires, especially when you're bringing in someone with the history of Mr. Santos and his mental health issues, his previous allegations, or not allegations, but previous history of lying to the police. I don't see how that helps them.
Let's not forget, he's in prison right now since 2016 for writing intimidating or threatening letters to the Florida governor. So that's an interesting tidbit for us. And Terry, I'm curious, at the end of the day, when you look at the Santos testimony, I understand why he needed to be brought in, but do you think the defense anticipated that cross-examination by the prosecution?
I think he anticipated it, but there's not much you can really do. When you put your client or someone you're needing to help you establish that the case happened the way you think it did, you know that those witnesses are going to be cross-examined. You know they're going to be drilled. And I'm sure the defense was thinking that, Santos is a criminal. He's going to say whatever he needs to say. And I think that the defense knew that his, mental state would probably come into play. But I do think at the end of the day, it was a good move to put him on because if nothing else, Jesse, this is reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury.
Maybe so, maybe not. Not quite there yet. We still have a lot more to consider. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're hopefully going to jump live and we'll have more of covering the testimony that's happened so far in this case. Stay tuned.